In the summer of 1970, after a year of school, I got an assignment to do a photographic essay on the New York temple, the Hare Krishna temple in New York. That was my first professional assignment and my last. That's a joke. Because once I did that assignment, actually, this is the magazine it came out in, Asia Magazine. It was the Sunday Insert magazine to 9 countries in Southeast Asia with a circulation of 630,000. So it's interesting because Srila Prabhupada visited that area of the world the next year, the following year. So actually many people were introduced initially to Krishna consciousness by this article. So in the fall of 1970, it came time for me to go back to school, and I had to do a master's thesis in photography. So I was initially very attracted when I came to the temple to do the article. My wife wrote the article, I did the photographs. She had the opposite reaction. She was an atheist. So that was interesting spin on our relationship. Anyway, in December of 1970, I went to India to do my master's thesis. I wanted to meet Prabhupada and film his activities in India. So Prabhupada had just returned to India a few months earlier with the first batch of Western disciples. And this is the first time that a large group of Vaishnavas, Western Vaishnavas, came to India. And it created a sensation. The Indian people were absolutely thrilled to see the Western Vaishnavas. After years of subjugation by the British and the Muslim rulers, finally, of course, they achieved independence in 1946, I believe. But still, to see Western Vaishnavas come to their shores was just amazing. Prabhupada created a spiritual revolution starting in India and all over the world. So this little, this is actually a movie frame. There's 24 frames a second in the movie. This is from a movie frame. And it's one of my favorite pictures because it illustrates the prediction of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur that the Krishna conscious movement would embrace people of all races and religions. We have Caucasian, Black African, Japanese, Chinese. Everyone can join, and we've seen that happen all over the world. Prabhupada was very proud of his Western Vaishnavas. Although we committed many mistakes in the early days, I was one of the oldest devotees in India at age 27. We were all very, very immature, you can say spiritually and materially. But Prabhupada was our father, and he carefully guided us. So what did Prabhupada do when he arrived in India? He started traveling to every large city, at least, and some smaller cities, by train. And whenever the devotees would stop at the station, this is Mathura Junction, we can see there's Yamuna Devi. Yamuna Devi is very famous. She sings the Govinda prayers every morning in all the temples around the world. So every time the train would stop, the devotees would jump off and have Harinam Sankirtan. And as you know, if anything unusual happens in India, there's crowds of people immediately. So word very quickly spread all over India that the Vaishnavas had come. Now, this is the town of Surat, Gujarat. How many have been to Surat? Yes, quite well known. Yeah. Srila Prabhupada received a wonderful reception in this town. Of course, we know most of the inhabitants are Vaishnavas, worship Lord Krishna. So I arrived in this condition. Hare Krishna. Yes, me. Changing bodies exhibit.
Well, quite young.
Anyway, Prabhupada very kindly allowed me to stay. Actually, I asked him initially, I met him in the evening, I showed him the article in the magazine. He was very happy to see that. And he said, I asked him if I could stay and travel with the party. And he said, are you going to become a devotee? And I couldn't imagine shaving my head and wearing robes. So I said, I don't think so, Prabhupada. But I was wrong. So anyway, Prabhupada, when he heard that, he said, then you cannot stay. So I was quite taken aback. I'd come, 10,000 miles, and I can't stay. When I got up the next morning, and nobody said anything, and Prabhupada didn't say anything, and I stayed for 2 months. So I could tell from that incident that Prabhupada could tell our hearts and minds. Anyone who met him felt that. So it was an amazing event, that arrival in Surat. Coming from the streets of New York, the chanting parties there, people just did ignore them, thought they were crazy devotees. To come to Surat and see this glorious reception. The second night I was there, thousands of people in the main street for a program. Prabhupada spoke, and there was kirtan. Prabhupada spoke, then he asked his disciples to speak, and then he asked me to speak, which is another shock. So I expressed my appreciation of the reception of the devotees in Surat, a very glorious reception. Every day, every morning, there was the Harinam party through different parts of Surat. And they would print the route of the Sankirtan party every morning in the newspaper so people would know where to meet the devotees. And the people in that area would decorate the streets. You could see saris going from house to house. And you could see the eagerness that they were to receive the Harinam party. It was a very slow procession because it was completely jammed with people. Wanted to give us garlands and drinks and sandalwood paste. This is Malati Devi. You might know her. Has she been here? Malati Devi?
Not recently. Not recently. She was here before.
Prabhupada would take his walk by the river every morning. I visited the same spot some years ago, and it's completely built up on both sides of the river. So it's Durla Prabhu leading the Boy Scouts in Harinam. You can see that little camera on his wrist. That's a regular 8 movie camera. We're very indebted to Durla Prabhu for taking those early films. Myself, I was only taking still photographs at the time. This is a Prabhupada preaching in a small village outside Surat. He's very animated during this lecture. He took many shots of his motions. Nanda Kumar Prabhu, Prabhupada's secretary for many years. This is Yamuna Devi leading the Mongol art team through Prabhupada's room. And Prabhupada was tireless. He would have 3 or 4 engagements per day, preaching. Prabhupada was very steady in his daily habits. If he knew what time it was in that part of the world where Prabhupada was, he knew what he was doing, because he had a very strict schedule. And that's how he got so much done. If you have any questions during the show, please speak up. Mr. Jerry Wall was our host. He was the banker with a 3-story building. He's the person on the right with the Gandhi cap. And he was very, very patient and tolerant and very helpful. He hosted all the devotees, 25 devotees, Prabhupada and myself. And Prabhupada saw him as a pure Vaishnava. When we left, he paid obeisances to us and begged forgiveness for any offenses. We didn't commit, he didn't commit any offense. We committed offenses. So many sick devotees in that time. Those early days in India, you could not buy a bottle of water. Quite a challenge. And then Prabhupada took us to the Kumbh Mela in Allahabad. He had us do 3 things at the Kumbh Mela: prasadam distribution, deity worship, and Harinam Sankirtan. This gentleman would seek out Prabhupada every day and pay full obeisances and then start jumping up and down. Prabhupada liked him very much. And that's little Saraswati on Shamsundar Prabhu's, her father's shoulders. Saraswati was a favorite at all the big Pandal programs. During kirtan, she would always raise her arms and dance. Well, Prabhupada stayed with us in the very cold conditions in Allahabad in February 1971. Prabhupada could have stayed at the Gaudiya Math, where he served many years. He could have stayed at the hotel, but he always wanted to stay with his disciples. And one day Prabhupada took us to the Gaudiya Math. Remember the old rickshaws? This is the Sri Rupa Gaudiya Math, where Prabhupada served for many years. These are the deities there. Yamuna Devi. And this is Benares. Prabhupada, after Kumbh Mela, he took us to Benares. And there was a festival where Prabhupada was drawn through the streets in a carriage drawn by white horses. Wherever Prabhupada went, he was always received very wonderfully and grandly. Because he preached to many of the leaders before he came to America. He was very successful with that. And when we went back to India, they gave us support, they invited us to their homes. So it was very wonderful to see how effective Prabhupada was in preaching to the leaders of the country. That's Jayapataka Swami on the lower left. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki. Prabhupada with his Western style shirt. One Mataji made this shirt for Prabhupada in San Francisco. And she was thinking, what style should I make? So she thought that Prabhupada's a cowboy, I'll just make him a Western style. Again, these are little still photos, still pictures from movie frames. And then Prabhupada took us to Mumbai for the Cross Maidan Pandal. Thousands and thousands of people every day. This was the time that Prabhupada called the Western Sadhu from the very back of the audience. Do you know who that is? Who? Yes. Right.
Which year was that? Which year?
1971. The first big pond was in Mumbai. The Prabhupada held many of these all over the country, in Delhi, in Chennai, in Calcutta, where thousands of people would come over a 10-day period. Hear Prabhupada speak and see the Western Vaishnavas. Lokanath Swami also came at this time, at Prabhupada. One other devotee from Canada, he met Prabhupada also here. His name is Dadi Harta. And on the 10th day, of the last day of the Pandal, there was a wedding. This is Bhagavan Prabhu from Sweden and his wife from Australia.
Padmavati.
Is it Padmavati? Okay, thank you. Padmavati from Australia. So in his lecture, Prabhupada said to the audience that this marriage is the real United Nations. When he said that, everybody cheered. Haribo! This is Subal Swami doing the fire sacrifice. And you can see that Western sadhu in the very upper left corner of the frame with long hair. That's Radhanath Swami. So Jean was back in America. I invited her to come to India. And she brought her book with her that she published as a sophomore in photography school. So she met Prabhupada and she asked Prabhupada, I'd like to do a project, a photographic project on an Indian village, untouched by Western technology. So we didn't know where to go, so we asked Prabhupada, where do you think we should go? And he said, wherever you go, you'll get your camera stolen and they will cheat you. So he said, best to go to Vrindavan. So before we went to Vrindavan, we took our art photographs around Mumbai. And then we went to Nepal with the intention of coming back down to Vrindavan. This is a very beautiful time of year, and we hiked to 10,000 feet and found a little cabin in a beautiful valley. We spent 5 days in that cabin. And I brought one book with me, Bhagavad Gita as it is, the first edition by Macmillan. And Jean read the book. She was very moved, actually, by the philosophy. She thought, for the first time, I might be something other than the body and the mind. We came back down to Vrindavan, and Jean's favorite place to photograph was the widows chanting Hare Krishna in the temples. She was very moved by their sincerity and devotion. So at that time there was no temple in Vrindavan, there was only a rented small apartment. The devotees were coming and going. And Gurudas and Yamuna Devi, they invited us to come to Calcutta to produce a Vyasa Puja book for Prabhupada. This is in July 1971. So we went to Calcutta and produced that book. This is the Calcutta temple. And this is about 10 months after I met Prabhupada. Jean came a little later, Vishaka came a little later, 2 months later. So at the Calcutta temple I took Diksha. And also Jananivas Prabhu was in that same initiation group. This is Prabhupada being greeted by the mayor of Delhi after Vrindavan. I'm sorry, Calcutta to Delhi. These are the deities of Radha Gokulananda with the installed at the Delhi temple. And then we went to Vrindavan, and there we were married, and Jean took initiation as Vishakadasi. We only have one picture of our wedding, because we were the photographers. Malati Devi actually took this picture. She rushed up to Vishaka during the ceremony and said, "Where is your camera?" So she got this one shot. And then we started traveling with Prabhupada, taking photographs, more photographs. And Prabhupada took us on a tour of Vrindavan. This is Radha Damodar Temple. This is Prabhupada telling the story of Mother Yasoda seeing the universe in Krishna's mouth. This is at Brahmandagat, right on the banks of the Yamuna. So Prabhupada came down to the Ghat. We were all swimming. At first he didn't want to come in, but then we begged him to come in, and he joined us. There's a movie of this. Have anyone seen this movie? Yeah. This is Adi Keshava Prabhu, Prabhupada's godbrother, known as Dr. O.B.L. Kapoor. And we carried Prabhupada in a palanquin up and down the very steep steps in Varshana. And then Prabhupada took us to Jaipur. Prabhupada was hosted by the Queen of Jaipur, Gayatri Devi. And we all stayed nearby. Every day we would rush to Radha Govinda's temple, along with all the inhabitants of Jaipur. Anyone been to Jaipur? Have you seen the mass of devotees running to Mangalarti? So, hundreds. So we joined them. And as usual, Prabhupada had a grand reception in Jaipur, drawn through the streets in a bullock cart. Prabhupada was India's national hero. Not everyone knows that, but some others have that title. But Prabhupada did far more than any other individual to bring the Vedic culture worldwide. And then we went to Juhu. And we know the story of the fight that Prabhupada went through for some years to secure that property. The owner sold it to Prabhupada and then by cheating methods, try to take it back. And you don't do that with an empowered acharya. Very dangerous. So he had an unfortunate end. And today we can see that there's a glorious temple in Juhu. Back then it was a small fishing village. We couldn't understand when Prabhupada was offered the land, but he took it. And immediately had the deities moved from a very beautiful apartment downtown Mumbai out to the fishing village. But today that's a huge center of Mumbai. Thousands of people every day come. So Vishaka Devi and I served here for 2.5 years in Juhu. And then Prabhupada wanted a film on ISKCON. So he actually financed our first film. He brought us back to the States, gave us $16,000 from his book fund, and we made our first film called The Hare Krishna People. Has anyone seen this film? Actually, all these films we're going through tonight, you can see on our YouTube channel called Hare Krishna Film Classics, if you're interested. So this is the camera that I used back then. Very bulky and heavy. You can see the padding around it was used to keep the noise down. Quite a noisy camera. And this is the tape recorder that Vishaka carried. It weighed about at least 15 or 16 pounds. The camera was about 16 pounds also. And this is the editing system we used back then. It was a hand crank winding the film through. It was very hard to keep the right speed at 24 frames a second. There's a lot of guesswork involved in that, actually. But somehow or other, the film was produced, and Prabhupada liked it very much. Howard Wheeler, listed as the narrator, is Hayagriva Prabhu. If you get a chance to read his books, he's a great writer. This is Prabhupada's mystical potency that in 6 years, this was going on in LA. Huge book distribution, production, going all over the world. Sometimes, people ask, Prabhupada, do you have any mystic powers? And everything is right, self-evident. He would always point to his devotees. This is my mystic power. Create Vaishnavas from Westerners. And also like this, so much expansion in a very short period of time. So we tried to cover all aspects of the movement in this film. Prabhupada giving initiation and marriage ceremony. Prabhupada being the chief minister of UP. And in one scene in the film, we have these cows running down the hill in slow motion. So when Prabhupada saw that, he said, "Can you fix it? They're floating." I don't think he'd ever seen slow motion. We explained to Prabhupada, this is a special effect. And Prabhupada said, it is all right. And the last scene is Prabhupada dancing at the Bhaktivedanta Manor. So my father was very supportive of my choice of becoming a devotee, and he bought us this editing table, which helped a lot in our production, and also a new camera. And the second film that Prabhupada saw, he saw 4 films total. It's called Brilliant as the Sun. This is a production that Prabhupada wanted to show his godbrothers in Mayapur that he was doing the work of his spiritual master in printing and distributing books. We decided to make a film on this book production. And we followed one book all the way from Prabhupada reciting the verse all the way through the final book. This is the first we chose. This Bhagavad Purana is as brilliant as the sun. So book production at that time was based in Los Angeles. This is the book production facility. And as each step was completed of the book production, it would be checked off. And here's this Mataji was the fastest typist I've ever seen. So she would type out the manuscript and put it on a tape. And it was inserted into this machine, which would print out all the pages. This is Archita Prabhu. He's still at the BBT 50 years later, serving. So the paintings for the books would be photographed. We followed one painting all the way from conception to completion. And then again, very, very tedious effort to produce a book, just like films in those days. So that photograph would be resized for the cover and then sent to the printer. This is a BBT truck. taking air containers to the airport for shipping all over the world. And Prabhupada would be very eager to get reviews for his books. These are very famous professors at very famous universities. And the final scene of the movie is a book distributor on the streets of Los Angeles distributing to a businessman. So we took this film to Prabhupada in 1975 Mayapur Festival, and we would sit in his room, and when even one guest came in, he would greet them and speak to them, and then he would ask to show the movie. This is like a businessman's briefcase. You would set it up very quickly and show the movie. So the third film that Prabhupada saw, he wanted this also, is a film on the New Vrindavan community, which was the first farm community established by Islam, called the Spiritual Frontier Devotee. Madhvananda Prabhu did the music for the film. He's a great composer and musician. His first album was Change of Heart. Remember that? A great album. So we showed all aspects of the farm community. It's a beautiful time of year. Lots of different crops. And Prabhupada was very proud of the milk production from the cows. They would give up to 40 liters a day, 40. And we showed a calf being born. And when Prabhupada saw these puris cooking, he leaned forward in his Vyasa-san. He said, "I want one." So this is the first temple. It began as Govindaji temple, but later on it became Prabhupada's palace. Prabhupada wanted 7 temples on 7 hills in New Vrindavan. So this is a very famous tourist attraction. All the work was done by devotees. There's no YouTube channel to learn from. So this is the Palace of Gold in New Vrindavan, West Virginia. It's an incredible work of art. Prabhupada's rooms. These are the deities of Radha Vrindavan Chandra. The last scene in the movie was the Harinam party on the top of a hill. I was in a helicopter shooting this. And the last film that Prabhupada saw is called Spark of Life. It's actually a 20-minute dramatic film. And these 2 college students on the campus, one is studying biology, majoring in biology, and the other is taking a class in religion. So they're talking about where does life come from? Does it come from matter or spirit? So these are all devotees, by the way. The professor was played by Damodar Prabhu, and he's the biology professor expounding the theory that life comes from matter. We try to illustrate that. Different gases form from the water and earth, different elements, and finally a one-celled creature is produced. So this one student is hearing all this information, but he's also hearing from his friend about the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita. That's what he studied in his religion class. So he'd break the body down into different parts, the skeletal system, the nervous system, the circulatory system, all the way down to the atom. Try to find where is life. When you get down to the atom, you still can't find where does life come from. It's still a big mystery to materialists today. Another scene in the movie, we show the from birth to death just by showing hands. All the way up until death. Another scene in the movie is a person on the operating table who's died during an operation, and the doctors are trying to bring him back to life without success. Once the soul leaves the body, there's nothing you can do to bring it back to life. And then a funeral scene where the body's buried by the priest, last rites. And finally, the biology student is convinced that life must come from life and not matter. Prabhu spent so much time preaching on this very point, that we are not the body, that we're different from the body and the mind, but we're the spirit soul, pure spirit soul. And that's where the energy is coming from. Otherwise, the body is like a puppet. If the puppeteer doesn't have his hand in the puppet, it doesn't move. If the soul is not in the body, then the body is useless. It's thrown away, it's burned, whatever. So he's finally convinced of the reality of the soul, and there's a happy ending. Srila Prabhupada ki. That's the end of our presentation. Do you have any questions or comments?
What's your latest film?
Latest film?
Huh?
We don't know.
No, but latest you did.
Well, I did. Yeah, and that was Hare Krishna, the mantra, the movement, and the Swami who started it all. And please show that film if you haven't. Please show it to friends, family, because it has great potency. I'm the director, of course, and I'm praising the film, but we have over 300 individuals and companies work on the film, plus some very great input from 2 Hollywood producers. So I don't take credits. And actually, we know that Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that he's the ability in all of us. So anyway, it was a great success. It went to 38 countries in theaters. And Vishaka Devi and I toured with the film. We saw time and time again people coming out of the theater with tears. So if you can establish an emotional connection with Prabhupada, that's a huge step forward for people. That means their mind. That means their mind is already there. The mind goes with the heart. So it's please share it.
In how many languages is it subtitled?
It's subtitled in 23 languages.
23.
All the major languages, including Chinese and Arabic. And that's on our website, HareKrishnaTheFilm.com. HareKrishnaTheFilm.com. But also it's on Amazon in certain countries. I don't know about, I'm not sure about France. But I think it's on YouTube right now, free. We have an international sales agent, so sometimes they put it up. You might check it out. Maybe somebody can check it out right now. Got their phone? Hare Krishna, the mantra, the movement, and the Swami who started it all. So please watch it if you haven't watched it. But we'd like to present to New Mayapur a collection of all our films on a pen drive. So this is a little book inside.
I got it. Is it there?
Hmm?
I bought it.
You bought this? Yeah. And a little pen drive. If somebody told me that, 30 years ago you could put all my films on a little piece of metal, I wouldn't have believed it. I mean, the technology is just incredible. So there's, everything's on here. This is an adapter for your phone. So you can use it, you can watch it on your phone also. There's about 96 hours of film. So I'm leaving this with New Mayapur community. Maybe you can have movie nights. There's one series, I don't know if you've seen it, some of you. It's called Following Srila Prabhupada. It's 31 hours. It's also here. It's all the films that we know exist of Prabhupada. And it's accompanied by 335 devotees who speak about Prabhupada at that time. So you'll learn a lot about Prabhupada because they were there. It's all first-hand accounts. Prabhupada's disciples and friends and well-wishers. So please watch that series if you can. Some temples, they show it every one day a week. Sometimes during Bhagavatam class or whenever. So. Anything else? Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Are you going to show some of your films while you're here?
Huh?
Are you going to show some of your films while you're here?
We can.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Movie nights.